we can be our worst critics and we limit ourselves more than anything. And in that same vein, I think that we sometimes will purposely sabotage ourselves for success because we don't believe that we should be able to be successful and win. And we actually feel better about finding the excuses as to why we can't do something. And so it will be, well, it's like that's a really hilly race. And I live in a flat state. Like I can't do a hilly race. No, you can. You can actually do a hilly race. Like you're okay. You can find a way to do everything. And I always share the story of even when I was considering taking my ultra running more seriously and really started dreaming of doing it professionally. My very first race that I ran, my ultra, was a 50-mile race, and I'd never run on the trails. I was actually terrified of running on trails. I was really afraid of animals. I was afraid of people hiding in bushes, like all the things in my mind that caused a lot of fear. The majority of my training was on a treadmill, and I had 2 little kids too. My kids were like 1 and 2 years old. So I think that being able to tell an athlete, first of all, there is always a way for you, and you need to find it because your journey is specific and unique to you. And so so much of your life has to do with where you live, where you come from, what your schedule is like, who the close people are in your life that you need to take care of, what your responsibilities are. But regardless of that, none of those things should be the excuses as to why you want to do something or why you want to pursue a dream. Never make those things excuses. Just find a way.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and this is the place where we share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. People who are living with great intention, doing hard things, scary things, and driving forward from a passion that comes from within. A common thread that we have seen amongst our guests over these almost 300 episodes is a commitment to never give up. No matter the challenge along the way, no matter what things may look like on paper, we have seen time and again that people who are living with purpose just keep going. I am so excited to introduce our guest today. As for BJ and I, this interview has been on our hearts for a few years now. With patience and an unrelenting trust in timing, we feel blessed to be sharing the mic today with professional mountain runner Sally McRae. Sally is a world-renowned trail runner, lifelong competitive athlete, coach, mom, writer, and businesswoman who ran her first ultra at the age of 30 and turned pro at the age of 33. She has run some of the world's greatest ultra trail races, including Lake Sonoma 50, NorthFace Endurance Challenge, Western States, UTMB, Tarawera, and most recently, she completed a 10-year dream to win the Badwater 135, which she did just last month. On paper, this woman blows many out of the water, but what has held our attention over the years is her gratitude, her honesty, and the graciousness with which she repeatedly reminds us all that we matter. Our dreams matter, and what sits on our hearts has purpose no matter what. Sally McRae, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Man, you're going to make me cry. That was such a sweet intro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, you're just, obviously we've been doing our due diligence and prep for the podcast, but we've been following you for years. And, those words are very much true. That's what has grabbed and held our attention is, how you articulate your experiences, how you speak about the challenges in your life. Like you've had dark times, you've had lots of high highs. And so it's all truth. It is 100% truth. And I'm glad that you're open to receive it.
Thank you so much.
So as you sit today on the other side of this 10-year dream, what have you been pulling away from, the experience as it's marinated and really become a part of who you are now?
It did take me a little while. I think being a busy mama, it always takes a little bit longer to think about everything that transpired. I mean, I feel like I came home and we like went on vacation back to the desert, and it was just, it was full blown, just kid time and kind of moving forward with just like family schedules. And then when my friend Sarah, who is actually on my crew, and a very talented, incredible photographer, she sent me a whole album. It was over 1,500 pictures. I just like started crying because she captured things that I didn't remember. She told a story through the photos and really allowed me just to, and it was in the evening one night. So I think my kids were like watching a movie or something. And I think at that point I was really able to take in the whole experience. I think more specifically, just the journey that I had been on to get there, but also sharing it with my crew, especially my husband, who has never crewed or paced me ever, was something that was really special. And as I'm now 2 months, no, not even 2 months, not even 2 months removed from the race now. And like most goals that I've set for myself, I think every time when I achieve something, it reminds me that I can keep going and I can keep reaching for new goals and new dreams. I mean, that's one of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes is, "You're never too old to dream a new dream." And I think that is so important in life, that even though I achieved this thing that I've been waiting to do for so long, I still have so much inside of me that I want to do. But every time that I'm able to achieve something, it gives me just a little boost of confidence of what is possible and of things to come. So I'm just enjoying this downtime. I'm still training and running and everything, but really enjoying just a break from the rigors of training and really just trying to find those moments of reflection. I'm still doing a lot of writing and writing down all the things that I learned. I feel like there was a lot from the training to race day.
So when you look at a dream that's 10 years in the making, so many people may have 2 years in been like, it's not happening. Like, it's too far out. It's too big of a dream. Or maybe next year I'll start working towards it. Or, when I get this new job I've been applying for, I'll be able to work at home and so a lot of times dreams can feel, well, I guess underneath it would be like this kind of like, we're not worthy to achieve our dreams. So that's kind of one aspect of it. But as far as like delaying dreams, like, oh, I'll start, I guess it's the classic, like, I'll start on Monday.
Yeah. Right?
So where do you gather the patience, to realize a dream that's a decade in the making?
It's really, I love this question, especially right now, because I was editing a chapter last night. It was from a story in my life that actually directly relates to this. And I read it to my kids and they were like, "Mom, is that true? Like that really is what happened?" But the whole message behind this particular chapter is how something that had happened to me when I was a little girl actually prepared me for 20 years down the road. And how so often when I look back on my life, that has always been kind of just the theme of my life. And as much as I never wanted to embrace it, I realized that embracing it was really embracing just who I am and this journey that I'm on. I feel like we definitely live in a world that's, we want fast results. You think about when the internet first came out, right? It was like Juno.com and it was like dial up. Like you'd wait for like 9 minutes just to like get a web page up. And like, that was exciting. Like finally getting on the internet. Now, everything needs to be quick and instant. And I think that in some ways it's a bit detrimental to the upcoming generations when all they've known is instant gratification and instant results in everything. But the greatest accomplishments and dreams and things that I've been able to do in my life have taken a really long time. And it isn't always because I kept failing or just like I couldn't get it right. It was also just embracing that what is a true life, and life can be complicated, can be messy. It's beautiful, it's mysterious, it's always changing, and I I had started out as a soccer player. I mean, that was like my greatest dream. And I really got to a place when I was in high school where I was being sought out by colleges all over the United States. And I was going to be the first one to go to college in my family. And I had this dream of being a professional athlete. You know, I was going to be a pro soccer player. And I had, since the time I was young, I had worked really hard for that. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to try when I'm 15 to try to get a scholarship when I'm 17. I mean, it was something that I had started training for many years, so that by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I had several years of dedicated, hard training under my belt. And I think what ended up happening was my whole world was flipped upside down for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And everything that I had been working for, I had this season of like, was that just for nothing? Like, did everything that I do was that for nothing? And of course, we can't see the finish line or what's around the corner of life. Like, we're not born with life manuals. And I think that I hit a point in my life where it was like, I'm either going to choose to complain and be upset and even act out on this by choosing bad choices for myself because I'm so angry and I want the world to pay for it type thing, or I'm just going to keep moving forward and do what I know to do best. And that was just work hard. That's all I kind of ever knew to do. And so I think that as the years rolled on, like these little glimmers of hope started popping out where it was like, oh, wow, like I never saw that coming. Like that's amazing. Like I can't believe that, that I'm here now. I was able to travel the world and I would be in places where something that I had done years before was playing out in a little orphanage in Ukraine on the other side of the world. And I started to look for those things. I think if we are living a full life, then we're looking for the miracles in every day. And I truly believe that our lives are filled with that if we look for them. It's easy to look for things to complain about, but it's also very easy to look for the beauty and the blessings in our life each day. And so it was just a conscious decision. I wasn't always great at it. It wasn't something that I did every single day, but little by little, I just kind of started changing my thinking. And so the dreams that I started dreaming up for myself, even in my 20s and my 30s, they were they were all rooted in a very childish, curious, wondrous part of who I was that I never wanted to let go of. And, that ultimately is kind of what kept me pushing forward, was just this little hope.
I like the word little because it's repetitive every day, right? If you keep doing little things every day, like eventually it's all going to stack up and add up to big things. And all too often we get caught up into the, okay, well, it's all or nothing. Like it's this big thing, like Badwater. Okay, so now you did Badwater. So now you would expect, okay, well, now you can just like chill and hang out. But no, you're back to training. You're back to a routine. And I think it's powerful to have that, let's call it a habit or routine that you've created that says this activity brings me joy. And it doesn't matter to what extreme, but it's something that I do and it's part of me. So I don't know anything else except to, win a big race and then get back at it because I know there's something ahead. Mm-hmm. And so as a coach, because you're a coach as well, how do you meet athletes with that mindset of building up to this one big race and then it shuts down afterwards without continuing on with that momentum?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we saw this so much in 2020, a lot of heartache and a lot of heartbreak when, people had trained so hard and they weren't able to stand at the start line. But also in the same vein are athletes that, they do train all year for that big race, only to have a DNF or an injury sideline them, or just to have a really bad day. I mean, a bad day on a course is common for every athlete. Doesn't matter if you're pro or not. We're in the year of the Summer Olympics. And so I think a lot of us saw that on display quite a bit. I mean, some of our favorites that we thought were just going to crush and take that gold medal never even made it to the final round, never even, got to walk out, in front of this, onto the stage and do what that we've all known they're so great at. And my hope even when I was watching that, and I was sitting watching, my kids are both athletes, and I even said to them, I was like, I hope that you remember this. There's a lot of records that were broken, but there was a lot of people who hold records that they themselves were broken. And it's showing us that, all humans, we are all the same in the fact that we're imperfect, and we can never predict how something is going to play out, no matter how well prepared we are. The only thing that we are able to control is how we react to whatever comes at us. So whether that's, feeling overwhelmed by pressure or an injury, or just, not being able to perform at your best, the way that you respond when things don't go your way, and the way that you respond when you are triumphant, they should both be in similar form. And it should always be in gratefulness, because we get to grow as athletes. I think that the opportunity to learn and grow is an invaluable thing that's often overlooked. And I believe that, I had 2 different experiences at Badwater in the 2 years I ran it. I was extremely disappointed the first year that I ran it. And to the point where I thought, well, I don't know if I could ever have it in me again to do that. But I knew deep inside that it was really my pride that was talking. So as athletes, we have to remember that when we fail, it's a part of our pride that is actually really hurting, because we know that family and friends knew how hard I trained. I said that I was going to do good. I said this is the year that I was going to get a PB, or that I was going to get in the top 10, or, and I said all these things out loud, and I just failed, and I just feel dumb, and my pride is hurt. Sometimes those are the very things that turn people away and don't keep them coming back. But instead, if we can take whatever the result is, whether we win or we fail at our goals miserably, if we can look at that and say, what, how can I grow from this? What was I supposed to learn? What was the lesson here for me? Because the truth is that every single person will be in that same spot someday. Every single person is going to be asking themselves, when things don't go their way, well, this just isn't for me. Or are they going to ask, I want to grow from this. I want to learn. So I think that's probably the most powerful thing that I can tell athletes, regardless of what level of training they're at, is every race experience you have is an opportunity for you to be better, even if you win.
Yeah. You had said something in there about responding to, really like the failures and the successes quite similarly, right? And to me, that makes me feel like it's like that neutrality, right? Where we're not getting too high, we're not going too low, although we may be feeling the pull to go to those places, but we're rested somewhere in the middle, where we're taking the experience in a way where we can learn from it, where we can recognize that we're stronger for it, that we're wiser for it. And I'm assuming you've learned this through experience. And so was there a failure or a success that you remember was a turning point of like, you know what, I got to respond to this? And it might not even have been in sport. I need to start looking at how I can be more masterful with my response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think that's just been a lifelong journey for me. I really love to parallel, and I share this a lot in social media, but I love to parallel my life as an athlete with just life in general. Because as much as I love being a professional athlete, I love to run, I love training, there's so much more to life. And so I really see that being an athlete, having the opportunity and the gift to compete, regardless of what the sport is actually one of our most powerful platforms to also communicate with the world around us and learn things about ourselves and connect with people in the world in that way. And so I think that, I had learned just over and over again that and I made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes in responses to people or situations where I realized like, what does being mad do? What did I get out of that? Nothing. But it's a very human reaction. I mean, every person is capable of anger, and there's nothing wrong with being angry, but what are you doing with the anger? Like what's the action that's then coming out of that anger? And then in the same form, am I then going to be more fearful of trying again next time? Or am I just going to give up and not try at all? And then on the flip side of that, it's just then not stopping. It's halting the belief in yourself, and we see this especially in youth sports, which is so important, I think, for kids to be a part of some sport in some way, especially team sports. But you see kids that they fail, they screw up, and they either get laughed at by their little teammates, their 5-year-old teammates, or you see them so embarrassed and they just don't want to try again. And so then who's speaking to that? Who in their life is speaking to them in that moment of failure and fear and not wanting to try again? What are the words that being said? And a lot of the self-talk that we do starts when we're children. And, and this kind of plays into a lot of like sports psychology, but, we see kids that grow up as great athletes that many times cannot perform during competition because they have these mental blocks. And sometimes you'll find that those mental blocks, they go back 4 or 5 years because of something that happened and a bad experience they had on the court, or something that a parent said, or even sometimes an injury. And this is true for adult athletes too. This is true for pros and recreational athletes. The mind is so powerful. And so, I've been an athlete pretty much my entire life. And so a lot of this has been just trial and error, and really understanding that on one hand, I've lost so many people in my life. So I'm always very aware of the fact, I always have that at the forefront of my life of I get one shot at life and I don't know when it's going to end. And sometimes it's cut short for some people. And so I'm either going to sit here and complain and be all upset, and I'm not going to try, and I'm going to care so much about what other people think, or I'm just going to get up and try again and see what happens. I'm going to be honest with myself and say, yeah, I actually didn't train that as hard as I probably could. I skipped a whole bunch of these types of workouts. I didn't eat my best. I didn't really recover that well. I could have done better in this area, or this is actually my weakness and I don't want to admit it. And, so it always comes back to looking in the mirror and being honest about the fact that, hey, as much as I want to be a superhuman, I'm not. And every day that I'm on earth, I know that I can always get better. But yeah, it was through a course of many trial and error that I just started to change my mindset and just my whole approach to training in general.
So that's, wow. So yeah, taking ownership, right? Taking ownership of our choices, right? Like this is where the rubber meets the road, like being able to switch it. So it's not pointing the finger out, it's pointing the finger, right back at yourself to see where you can grow, right? Like that, if you really want to get honest with yourself, that's how you grow. But you mentioned something that we really love to talk about, which is mindset and mental training, the well-trained mind. How did you, let's see, where do we start here? So I'm assuming at one point you realized like your mind was untrained, or that you were fighting for your limitations, we like to say. And then how did you go along the path to understanding that there's something more than just the physical aspects of getting the best out of yourself, that there's something upstairs that we can really work on? Well,
I think as a young girl, I was known for being really tough. I mean, my mom was amazing. We had 5 kids in my home. My dad was pretty violent, and he took that out quite a bit on me. And what I learned starting for as far back as I can remember, and I think it's just maybe the way that I'm made, but I always kind of had this feeling of, I need to protect my sisters. I need to kind of like stand up and be the tough one. And so from a young age, I made that decision to not cry. And it is, when you look back now that I'm a mom and I have 2 children of my own who they are my world and my life and my joy. They're such a gift. But I think for a child to choose that I'm going to not cry and I'm going to be tough because I don't want to disrupt the house, or I need to be the strong one for my siblings. It's sad, for one, but that became a very big part of who I was. And I was known for being a very strong kid. And I was just, anyway, I was pretty athletic growing up. I was always really strong and I was fast. And I played tackle football with the boys. I was very much more of a tomboy. I loved wearing boy clothes, even cut my hair like super short. Like I loved just sport. And I loved that I was tougher than the boys. And there were a few times too, when I was playing soccer, the city that we had lived in, there weren't enough girls to play soccer. So I played on boys teams, and, I made the all-star team. And I remember being so excited when the dads would just be screaming at their sons, "You can't let a girl beat you. How can you let a girl beat you?" And I just loved that. Like, I just relished in that. I had this very edgy bitterness about me. I don't know where it came from, but I was just really fiery, and I took that out a lot on kids when I played soccer. And so I think that I kind of have always rested on that. I went on to play soccer in college, and kind of the same thing. Like, I was really tough. And people would say that. You grew up your whole life with people saying, "You're so tough, Sally. You're so strong. Like, you can take anything." And I was tough physically when you looked at me, and I was just tough mentally. And that's what I would tell myself. The wonderful thing about ultra running is it doesn't matter how tough you are. It strips you to your core. It strips every single layer down. It wears you out. I mean, you just become so mentally and physically exhausted, especially in the longer races, and especially in a race like Badwater, that it kind of forces you to look at yourself and ask yourself, "Now tell us how tough you are." And I think that, at my journey as a pro ultra runner, I started to kind of build this relationship with myself, like mentally, where I was like, "Dude, what's wrong with you? Like, you should be tougher than this. You should push through this." And I did sometimes. And my first 100-mile race, I finished on a fractured leg. Probably shouldn't have done that, but I'm tough. I can run on that right into crutches. I was out of the sport for a little bit because of that. And there were a lot of races and training cycles where I just pushed through pain because I could, because I had endured so much as a child in my whole life, that I just felt like I was made for this sport and I could kind of endure better than anyone else. But the reality is that so much of that toughness was actually rooted in bitterness. It wasn't rooted in anything that was good. It wasn't rooted in something that I could stand on and be proud to spread to other people. And so I think that I just came to terms with that one day. It was like, I want to be someone who, is honest about where my strength comes from. And if I'm honest about where the strength comes from, and something that I'd be proud to tell my children, I'm not just going to teach them to be bitter. I'm not going to teach them, well, if somebody puts you down, then, just tell them they can F off and, flip them off and like stay hard, like that was not, I wanted something more than that, because I believe what is impacting, especially after our lives are done and gone, is how people remember you and how you treated them, how you made people feel. If someone were to ever say my name and I was only known as just being this bitter, tough girl, I'm not sure I really made a powerful impact in that way. And so it has been kind of like a long journey for me, and just a deep conviction in my heart that, what if instead of pretending that I was so tough, that I just said I really wasn't as tough as I thought I was. I'm just human. What if I was actually more brave than I was tough? Because anyone can be brave. Anyone can be courageous. It doesn't matter how physically strong you are, what your body looks like, or what you've done in the past. That's a choice. The very definition of courage, you think about, it's just knowing what is in front of you and choosing to keep going. And so that has become my motto, actually, for many, many years. And I kind of hung on to that and kind of pushed that out into the social media world while I was training for Badwater. It was like, it's okay to feel weak, because we all have those moments. They're very human. It's okay to feel that fear and to feel pain, because we are actually humans that were made to feel. That's the most like normal, natural thing. You're supposed to feel all those things. But then the most powerful thing is what you do with it. And I wanted to be able to say that I could feel everything that was in store for my personal journey, and that I knew what to do with it. And the one thing I knew to do with that was to keep moving forward. And I think that can encourage the youngest little athlete to maybe even somebody that is in a hospital bed and that's ill. I'm not going to go walk into a hospital room and tell someone that they just need to stay tough and they just need to grit it out because they're strong. No, it's okay to say, like, this sucks, this hurts, this isn't fair, but be brave to start each new day. Be courageous to embrace whatever is in store for you as you sit in this hospital bed. If there's breath in your lungs when you wake up each day, there's a purpose for your life. And so I just really wanted to really expand and dive into that messaging and dive into that kind of mindset over, Sally's so tough as nails. I mean, that was one of my nicknames, was Nails. So
yeah.
Yeah.
What have you learned, if anything, about the power or the quality of, I guess two words are coming to me, like surrender. Like when I think about ultra running and being out in Mother Nature, like you're never going to beat Mother Nature. And gentleness as a mom, bringing humans into this world, like there had to have been a gentleness that they brought out from within you. And so,
Absolutely.
What have you learned about that? Like I can so resonate with the toughness, when somebody does something to you and you're like, F you, but it's kind of, when you back up and look at it, it's kind of ugly, Mm-hmm. It's not gentle. It's very forceful. And I also think that it's energy sucking. So what have you learned about just the art of surrender and gentleness in life?
I love that. I love that surrendering. And I do have to add too, I mean, I think I'm always a work in progress in all those things. I mean, I think that, and my kids are so great at balance. Now that they're 13 and 15, they remind me, of that too. And they keep track of when I lose my cool. But I think that's, that idea of surrendering is just, we all want to have control. At the end of the day, we want control of our lives. We want control of the future. We want to have control and know that things are going to end well, that we're going to be successful, that, if I start a training cycle, that I'm going to be stronger and fitter than I've ever been at the end of it, so that when I'm standing at that start line, I'm injury free. I mean, we want that control, and we want to know, because that's what gives us confidence. And I think I had even shared this at one point it was right before I raced Badwater. I did a little video and I just kind of broke down my training stats. I said I ran like over 2,000 miles, climbed over 100,000 feet. It was like X amount of hours in the gym, only to learn that I have no control of the outcome. Just because I did all that doesn't mean I deserve to have the race that I dreamed of. And we hear this a lot in sports. Oh, you deserve to win. No, I don't. Why do I deserve to win? Is it not every other person that has dreamed of going to Badwater, standing on the start line with me? Do you think that no one else trained hard? I mean, and just because we're all of different fitness abilities and we're running at different paces, don't we think that everyone deserves to win, to achieve their goals? And if I believe that, if I really believe that everyone next to me is just as valuable in their goals and their dreams and their commitments to their craft as I am, well, then I can actually think that the way that I'm going to win is because I deserve to win. And I can't actually even believe that all this work that I put in is going to dictate exactly how this race plays out. Now, sometimes we hear that. Sometimes we just hear athletes say, like, I had the race that I dreamed of. Everything went well. It was so smooth. And my favorite is the stars aligned for me. And I'm like, I've never had that happen ever in my life. Like, I've never had a perfectly smooth, amazingly stars aligned race. And I used to giggle about that because I'm like, what? How are you aligning the stars? Why aren't they aligning for me? And so I think that, you know, there's something that we can actually find peace in when we begin a training cycle, or we stand at the start line, we know, you know what, today could actually be a super uncomfortable, terrible race day, or this could actually be everything I ever dreamed it to be. But regardless of the two different outcomes, I'm still going to be me, and I'm going to be just as valuable as when I started, as what I finished. And so therefore, I'm going to race my heart out, and whatever comes my way, I'm going to do my best and keep moving forward. That's the only thing that I can control. And maybe doing my best and moving forward is going to get me to the top of the podium. Maybe doing my best and getting me forward is going to have me be the last person to cross that finish line. So I think it's just looking at being so obsessed with, and I actually, Strava just released the little excerpt that I wrote about this. And I said, I started to become more obsessed with how I responded than with my expectations. And that's kind of how I trained. I would go out and train and put myself in situations, and I'd say, all right, so when your stomach is totally feeling this way, what are you going to do? What are you going to eat? How are you going to move? You know, when your legs feel like this, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be? It was never like, okay, then we call it a day. It was like, so what then do you do? What then, how then are you going to move forward? Yeah.
I see that often with athletes too. Like, I wasn't having a good run, so I stopped.
Yes. Yeah. And I've been there before too. It just wasn't my day. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like we get onto the pattern of like, okay, well, now this is happening quite often. Like, how do we interrupt that process? And the only way to interrupt the process, I believe, is to, you know, build upon what you're saying, is keep going. Like, take the next step. Okay, well, what does it feel like? Okay, eventually, right? Eventually the side stitch will go away. You'll puke, you'll throw up, you'll get it out, and then you'll need to refuel again. And I think we're hesitant to have experiences. I really do. I feel, you know, we build up and do all this work for races, and we put so much pressure on ourselves to have it be the be all end all, and we forget that in the experience of putting ourselves in that environment, we're gonna navigate our way. So I love, and I heard you say that before, that philosophy of deserving to win, because I think we've all been there. Like, we feel like we put in the miles and the elevation, and then of course it's the world owes us, right? Of course it ove us, because we have control over that. But we don't. We don't. Yeah,
and I think that's hard too. I mean, there've been, outside of running, really big decisions. And we've all hit these crossroads in our life. You have to make a really big decision, or it's like this one interview or this one event that you know could actually kind of change the trajectory of your year, or maybe your entire life. And it's like your nerves are just like built up, and it's like, oh my gosh, I hope I either choose right, or I hope this whole thing goes well, because if it doesn't. And I remember sitting with somebody, it was like a decade ago, and I was so worked up. It was, I can't remember if it was an interview or it was like an event, it was like something, but I was like, oh my gosh, like if this doesn't go right. And they looked at me and they said, and then what? So let's actually talk about that. It's not going to go right. It is not going to go any way that you wanted it to go. So now tell me, Sally, who are you? And it just really hit me. I was like, no one's ever talked to me like that, like said that to me before. Like, that's so powerful, because we put so much value into an event or a thing. And we believe that we ourselves, our very soul, is so attached to that we will forever be changed in only a negative way, We don't understand that, hey, if it doesn't go the way that you wanted to, that actually might be the best thing that could happen to you. And I think a very simple Hollywood way to relate to this is, in love stories, right? It's like the guy didn't get the girl. And so his whole world is like turned upside down, but then he meets someone better that he didn't see before, that he didn't know. And it was just a better scenario. And it's like, oh yeah, like that. But so often that's how life is. I mean, I remember, losing my mom at 17, I thought this really is the end of my life. Like, how is there anything good on the other side of this? Especially what I'm left with at home. Are you kidding me? And the reality is that life actually got worse for the year after that. Was the worst year of my life. Every 4 weeks, something terrible happened. And I just remember thinking, this is a bad life. Like, I think this is just the path for me. So I'm now going to expect that everything in my life is just going to be miserable. I'm going to live this miserable life. The reality is now, as I look back, I see that so many of those experiences that I hated, that I dreaded, that just at that time crushed me, have set me up for so many things that I've been able to do and achieve in my life, because I was able to either call back on those things, or I learned lessons in those times, or I was able to understand I can actually go through so much more than I thought. Or it just allowed me to open up my heart to more empathy and compassion to the people and the world around me. So, I think that taking in a bad race day, when an athlete tells me like, it just wasn't my day, so I pulled out, it turns into a really good conversation. Because when we stand at a start line with 5,000 other people are hoping it's going to be their day, the reality is we are all going on the same course. So it isn't about finding your day. It's about moving on the course as best as you can. So it's about giving your best, not finding when it's going to be your best day, because there's very, very, very few of those. And so really it's just communicating with the athlete in a different way. Don't tell me that it was your day. I want you to tell me that you did your best.
Yeah, because, the whole your day and the stars align and all of that lends to this idea that the only thing that's good is that you hit your time, or you win the race, or, you place top 10 or whatever it is. But what if we had a mindset shift where we realize that, that day, that run that we so wanted to be like, I'm just going to go, I knew it was going to be a bad day. I knew it was going to be a bad run. Like, I'm done. 2 miles into 10 miles. I'm done. I'm not doing it. What if we just took a breath? What if we zoomed out our view and we said, I'm going to, like quoting you, I'm going to get obsessed with how I respond to what comes next and what's next and what's next. And what if we began to see that those may just actually be the best days?
Yes.
Like how would we shift from results-oriented training to process-oriented training? Wouldn't you think that would translate to everything in our life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I think, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, I think that we live in a world where results are they're instant, right? And we also, I mean, we even do this in our training. It's one of the toughest things to really teach an athlete is, hey, every time you train, that actually isn't a test to see how far you've come. Like, you shouldn't be testing yourself every time you train. You're training. There's one test that you're going to take. It's the end of this cycle. So I don't care if you get a Strava record every single time you go out on a run. Like, I actually want you to hide your workouts now because you're having a hard time with that. Like, I think that it's look at you guys. Both of you guys are like, totally. We're totally relating, right? But so much of that has to do with confidence and being in control. Well, I need to control the situation. I need to see that I'm results that I'm building, because I need to make sure that on race day that I'm going to do exactly what I want to do. And so the process, accepting the process, is so powerful. You know, I had an athlete actually a couple months ago. She did not perform well at all in a race. It was for her expectations. She did not perform well. She was really, really upset. And I had been giving her a series of races to do as prep for one race. And the reason why I had her do that was because I realized that's like so much of what she does, her mind gets in the way. And so I wanted her to train herself for the pre-race day, race day, how you're fueling, like what are you telling yourself like during this race, so that when we do get to race day, the A race, that you have had practice in those areas that have nothing to do with your running. And I think that, you know, what we can actually tell an athlete when even if they've had a series of bad races is, you know, at the end of the day, there's one race in life. And that's the day that you cross that final finish line and you take that final breath. All of these races that we do, because there's thousands of races all the time. There's hundreds of races every weekend just here in California. You know, when we look at all the races, we can kind of see those as more as checkpoints. You know, this one race that you did it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't take away any value of who you are as an athlete or even as a person. And you can choose to grow and learn from it and then keep moving forward. And I think that, you know, that kind of allows the athlete to take a breath and give themselves a little bit of grace and know that there is so much more ahead. And even if they do reach it, awesome, you got that PB, or you finished in a placement that you were hoping for. Okay, we're going to build on that now. Like, we're not done. And I've had to tell myself that, you know, like finishing Badwater, it's like, yeah, you work so hard for a race, but that isn't it. That isn't all. That was just a checkpoint in my life. I was able to say, yeah, I did it, but there's so much more.
Yeah, I always think that our challenges or our accomplishments, right, are preparing us for the road ahead, right? So there's something else coming that Badwater has prepared you for. So speaking of preparation, process-oriented, and you've been on the podcast tour. You've been talking Badwater, like you're probably talking it in your sleep at this point. You've done tons of podcasts on it. But I'd love for you to share maybe just one epic memory from your preparation for your experience in Badwater.
I think my husband was able to come out with me a few times to the desert to crew me at some pretty gnarly spots on the race course. So I was able to get on the race course. I started going out there like 7-8 weeks before race day. I was like spent half a week in the desert and then half the week back home. And so I was always doing that. And for the most part, I could kind of do my own thing without crew for some of the training sessions I had. But there were a few very key workouts that I needed to do, and I needed someone to crew me. And just because of where it was in the course, it's kind of dangerous and not smart just to go way out far by yourself when it's 125 degrees. So we were, it was really, really funny. It ended up being, I'm not sure if you guys saw the picture. I'm wearing all white, and it's like this beautiful sunset, the backdrop of the Eastern Sierra. My husband is the one that took that picture. And it got shared just thousands of times all over social media. But I always tell him, I was like, that is like my favorite day of training, because you were there and we laughed so much and I suffered so much. That picture, I'm dry heaving in that whole, and he's the one that told me, he's like, but you gotta see the sunset. It is so freaking amazing. And so I'm looking at the sunset. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And I just remember like my eyes just like welling up with tears because I love the Eastern Sierra so much. And this race is so beautiful, how you go through this desolate desert that makes you feel like you're on Mars, and then it ends in the Eastern Sierra, which is like one of my favorite mountain ranges in the world. And we were just gifted with this absolutely magnificent sunset, and there was just so many different colors, and it was just rich. But earlier that day, the reason why I needed him was because I wanted to do a really hard run up Mount Whitney Portal Road, which is how the race ends. It's a 12-mile, 5,000-foot climb. And it wasn't too hot at that time. It was about 100 degrees. And so I had asked him, like, yeah, I'm going to head out. You can start driving up maybe like in 30, 40 minutes. We stayed right there in Lone Pine, that little main street right there. We just stayed in a hotel. And so he came up and he found me, and he kind of slowed down and check on me and see how I was doing. And so I made it all the way to the top. It was a really hard effort. And they said, all right, the second part of my training is going to be pretty uncomfortable for me. And it's going to start off with me, what I like to call tenderizing my legs. So I'd done this 5,000 foot climb, 13 miles up. And then I ran as hard as I could, 3-4 miles down the mountain, which was pretty steep. And then he picked me up about 3 or 4 miles down. And then I said, all right, I'm going to go eat a lot of food. I want to see how my body does when I just eat a lot of like good food. So, and then straight from eating, we drove out into the desert, and I needed to do a long run on the desert. So I didn't really get a lot of rest in between these two workouts. So we drove down to this little, it's called Vibras Cafe. If you're ever in Lone Pine, go to it. It's like the hippest, hottest spot in Lone Pine. If you've ever been to Lone Pine, you're giggling with me because there's nothing hip and hot about it. But this place is actually really cool. They make Aussie bowls and fresh smoothies and like gluten-free banana bread. And so I got avocado toast. I got this big Aussie bowl, and I got a big piece of gluten-free banana bread. I ate all of it. Like my belly was nice and full. And then we get in the car and we start driving out there. I was like, that was like all really good food, like lots of my favorites right there. And I hop out of the car to go jump in to start my run. And I was like, oh man, I'm really full. Like that is really full. My legs are screaming at me because the mountain run I just done, like I gave max effort on that. And I did that purposely because I was trying to assimilate a point in the race. And so I was like, all right, my belly's full, so I'm not feeling too amazing. My legs are completely shot. All I want to do is go lay down and just sleep. And the wind was ripping at this time, like where we were. It was so windy. And so I threw on this little white like jacket breaker, and he's just joking with me. Like everything is a joke. And my husband, he's been my best friend since we were 18. So we always do have a lot of fun together. And I was like, yeah, I don't even want to joke. And so I start running. I start running down the path, and he's like pulling up. I mean, there's no one on this road, but he starts pulling up slowly next to me, and he's trying to tell jokes, and he's playing music, and he's taking video, and so I just remember that whole run and me telling him, I was like, I'm so sick. I don't feel good. Like just complaining as I'm running, and I had to stop several times. I had to stop. There's like 2 times I had to stop and just sit in the car because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so terrible. He's like, yep. How are you going to feel on race day, Sally? Like teasing me because that's what I would always say. And so, as the day went on and as we got closer to that mountain range, it just became a really like sweet moment having him out there as I'm struggling, and he's just trying to encourage me, and he's capturing all this on video, and he's laughing with me. And so, yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite training days. It was a lot of great discomfort, but man, it ended up being a really key part of training because I ran most of that race in complete discomfort on race day.
Did you take your obsession with your response into race day as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was, I think that was one of my most powerful tools was, and it was funny because so much, weird things were happening the day or two before the race. And you could kind of sense even some of the race field being like, what's going on? Because a week before it was like 130 out there. And everyone that does Badwater is very well trained and very well heat trained. No one really goes out there and is like, oh, wow, it's hot. Like no one thinks it's hot. I even feel like that some people like, you better not say that it's hot because that means you're weak, like everyone's kind of walking around like, there's people at the expo, like they're wearing full like jeans and sweatshirts. I'm like, okay, all right. I see you peacocking over there. Like, what's going on? Like everyone's like, oh, it's cool out. But what ended up happening was a storm rolled in and it rained. We're like, what in the world? Like we got rain twice and it didn't last very long. It was like 20 or 30 minutes, but the wind was just this whirly wind coming from every single direction. And I remember when we were driving to the start line, looking at the 930 wave who is out there battling the wind already. And I remember telling Eddie, I had come out and trained so much and I had trained in wind quite a bit. And two of the times that we went out there, I ran from the start line on the course and the wind was always at my back pushing me. And so I would tell Eddie, I'm like, dude, I really hope that we have this wind pushing at our back. And so I thought that's what the wind was when we got out there. Well, once the race started, it was very clear that it was not at our back. It was at our face and at our side. It was all over the place. But I think that having trained out there and just really working on that mindset of I want to respond in the right way. I just didn't let it bother me. But I'll tell you, it did bother a lot of people on race day and just passing people and checking in with them. How you doing? And they're like, I don't know what to do about this wind. It's just too much. It's and trying to encourage like, hey, we have a long day ahead of us. And but it's hard when you train so hard and then you realize like, I didn't train for this part though. What do I do? Well, that's okay. That's okay. Don't let it be bigger than you. If there's something that's brand new, it's actually isn't as big as you think it is. It's just a little surprise that you can acknowledge and keep moving on. So
don't give your power to it, right? Don't give your power away.
Yes.
Because then you're just at a loss. Like and you can't struggle to find a way out. But the wind is only one thing. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other things that come along, the darkness and the body sensations, let's just call it body sensations, and the reflexes that the body has. But I feel like that's so appropriate because, we do this training, let's just say tempo workouts or intervals, or you're on the bike and, you hit a certain speed. But then race day comes and you have that wind. And so you're still trying to push that speed or push the interval that you were hitting really, really confidently. And it's not what's being displayed to you. Like you're not getting or hitting that pace. And then you feel frustrated. And then you go down a dark hole of like, but I trained. And so back to your point about I deserve, I've done the work, but have you really done the work? And I think, my question is like the specificity, and to the level of specificity that you've done in your training, how important is that? And I kind of know the answer, but when is specificity appropriate, and when is it important to just do the little things consistently all the time?
I think that I think there's a balance between the two, because what I'd say, like from a coaching, talking about like sport, from that aspect, I always try to be careful about being too heavy about like the actual like race course, like getting on the race course, because there are athletes that will never be able to get on the terrain of the race that they're training for, or they're never going to be able to they're just on a treadmill because they work 70 hours a week and they have 4 kids, and it's just like the treadmill is where I get to train. And so if I tell an athlete, well, the only way that you can train for this race and be successful is if you actually get on the course and do it, that actually isn't true. And we've seen this quite a bit with athletes of all, different levels who have been able to find a way. And I think that is far more powerful. I think that so often we can be our worst critics and we limit ourselves more than anything. And in that same vein, I think that we sometimes will purposely sabotage ourselves for success because we don't believe that we should be able to be successful and win. And we actually feel better about finding the excuses as to why we can't do something. And so it will be, well, it's like that's a really hilly race. And I live in a flat state. Like I can't do a hilly race. No, you can. You can actually do a hilly race. Like you're okay. You can find a way to do everything. And I always share the story of even when I was considering taking my ultra running more seriously and really started dreaming of doing it professionally. My very first race that I ran, my ultra, was a 50-mile race, and I'd never run on the trails. I was actually terrified of running on trails. I was really afraid of animals. I was afraid of people hiding in bushes, like all the things in my mind that caused a lot of fear. The majority of my training was on a treadmill, and I had 2 little kids too. My kids were like 1 and 2 years old. So I think that being able to tell an athlete, first of all, there is always a way for you, and you need to find it, because your journey is specific and unique to you. And so so much of your life has to do with where you live, where you come from, what your schedule is like, who the close people are in your life that you need to take care of, what your responsibilities are. But regardless of that, none of those things should be the excuses as to why you want to do something or why you want to pursue a dream. Never make those things excuses. Just find a way. So for me, with Badwater, getting on the course wasn't because I didn't know what the course was like. I lived 3 hours from the course, and I had already raced it. And hello, it's a road race with some climbing. You do pass 3 mountain passes, but it's a hot road. So you actually can train for that pretty much anywhere. There's, heat training is a lot easier to do than altitude training. And so that's another thing that's attractive about it. Even in the winter, you can do heat training and assimilate that with layers and treadmill and running inside and all of that. But I think for me, because I was so hyper-focused on mindset, it was actually a very quiet place for me. And, my everyday life is loud. It's very busy. It's scheduled down to the hour every single day, 7 days a week. That being able to get away and get on that course, it brought just a lot of peace and a lot of time just for prayer and meditation and a lot of race envisioning. And that's just specific to me as an athlete. I don't think that, I talk to some athletes, they like to not know what the course is. I think that's fun. Like that's so exciting to them. But for me, like I'm a very visual person. I can remember a lot of things. And I knew the course so well that I knew what certain bushes looked like and what mile marker I was at based on a bush or a certain rock or a cacti. The way the road slanted to one way, I was like, okay, this is mile 68.2. And all those cues were so powerful to me because I knew I couldn't control some things, but I could be a student of the course. And so that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to just take in as much knowledge as I possibly could. So I would go out there too. I'd watch the weather. And so I would go out when it was 98 degrees, and then I'd go out when it was 125, and then I'd go out when it was 112. And if I couldn't find the temperatures that I wanted to train in, I would go and find them. So I would stay in Palm Springs and then in Palm Desert, and I would go and search out exactly what I wanted to do. And so much of that was just, one, it was a great gift. I mean, it's the gift of being able to do this as a career. But I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to feel the way that I had felt in 2018 when so much of what was going on some of it was a surprise. And it was, I'd let myself down in some ways with the way I'd responded it to all. So, it was kind of a personal test. It was research. It was wanting to become a master really of that race and be able to speak so candidly and thoughtfully about it. I'm absolutely in love with that course. So, yeah.
Do you think your business there is done, or do you feel in your heart you'll be back?
Oh yeah, I do plan on going back next year because I did admit there was 3 goals that I had for myself. So I won, and I'm so grateful for that. That was the biggest dream of mine. But I did finish several hours later than I had planned to. And, part of that was just because of what I was feeling physically. But I think that, it was only, I'd say probably 10, 15 miles even from the finish line. My crew was like, all right, Sally, just focus on the finish. Because I was telling them, I can't believe how far behind my goal I am. I can't believe it's this late already. And they're like, Sally, get to the finish. We're not even, who cares about your time goal? But that is kind of just my mindset always, is like, that's what makes sport fun for me, is like, wow, like we can always improve something. We can always grow and learn and practice. And that's the best part of being a human, is that you're not perfect. And so I think that next year I would love to go after those 2 goals and put my hand in the plow again and see what happens. But I do have other things in store as well, and other adventures that we're kind of working on. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. We'll see if I get picked again. I mean, I might not it's a big application process, and it's a board of people that sit at the table and handpick each person. So, they might be like, we don't want Sally back, or we want to give her spot to someone else. I do think that there'll probably be a lot more applicants than there have been, based on even just the people that have reached out to me and some of the other pro athletes that are now hoping to toe that line. So I'll be very grateful if I get picked again.
Awesome. Well, we will all be following and watching your continued journey, and
Thank you.
Just keep being more of you. We need you to be more of you, as there's nobody like you, right? There's nobody. We're all so unique, and I believe that you're on purpose and you're sharing your gifts, and I think there's so many more to be unwrapped in the future. So thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Wow, really, really appreciate the encouragement. That really warms my heart. Thank you so much.